The Portuguese Empire emerged from a small kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula's western edge, becoming the world's first global maritime empire. Portugal's imperial journey began in 1415 with the conquest of Ceuta in North Africa under Prince Henry the Navigator, marking the start of European overseas expansion. This strategic port provided Portugal with its first foothold beyond Europe and demonstrated the potential for profitable ventures across the seas. Prince Henry the Navigator, 1394 to 1460, became the driving force behind Portuguese exploration, establishing a navigation school at Sagres and systematically pushing Portuguese sailors further down the African coast. His vision combined religious crusading zeal, scientific curiosity, and economic ambition. Portuguese navigators developed revolutionary maritime technologies, including the caravel, a swift, maneuverable vessel perfect for exploration, and advanced navigational instruments that would enable unprecedented oceanic voyages. The systematic exploration of the African coast yielded immediate rewards. Portuguese traders established trading posts along the West African coastline, exchanging European manufactured goods for gold, ivory, and increasingly, enslaved people. The discovery of gold mines in Guinea provided Portugal with the wealth necessary to fund further expeditions. By 1488, Bartolomeu Dias had rounded the Cape of Good Hope, opening the sea route to Asia and fundamentally altering global trade patterns. The 16th century marked Portugal's golden age of expansion. Vasco da Gama's successful voyage to India, 1497 to 1499, established the crucial sea route to Asian spice markets, breaking the Venetian and Ottoman monopoly on this lucrative trade. Pedro Álvares Cabral's accidental discovery of Brazil in 1500 added an entire continent to the Portuguese realm, though its full potential wouldn't be realized for decades. Under Manuel I the Fortunate, 1495 to 1521, Portugal constructed a vast trading empire stretching from Brazil to Macau. Unlike the Spanish model of territorial conquest, the Portuguese initially focused on establishing fortified trading posts, feitorias, along strategic coastlines. This approach required fewer resources while maximizing profits from high-value goods like spices, silk, and precious metals. Afonso de Albuquerque, appointed governor of Portuguese India in 1509, transformed Portugal's Asian presence from a collection of trading posts into a formidable naval empire. He captured key strategic positions including Goa, 1510, Malacca, 1511, and Hormuz, 1515, creating a triangular network that controlled the Indian Ocean's most important trade routes. Goa became the capital of Portuguese Asia, earning the nickname Rome of the East for its magnificent architecture and cultural significance. Portuguese influence extended far beyond their controlled territories. They established trading relationships across Asia, from Ceylon, Sri Lanka, to Japan, where they arrived in 1543. Portuguese missionaries, particularly Jesuits led by Francis Xavier, followed traders, spreading Christianity and Portuguese cultural influence. By 1580, Portuguese was the lingua franca of Asian maritime trade. The Portuguese Empire developed unique administrative structures adapted to its scattered maritime nature. The Estado de India governed Asian territories from Goa, while Brazil remained under direct royal administration. This decentralized system allowed for local adaptation while maintaining overall imperial coherence. Brazil's development accelerated dramatically after 1530 when Portugal recognized the territory's potential for sugar cultivation. The captaincy system divided Brazil into hereditary fiefs, encouraging private investment in colonization. Sugar plantations, worked by enslaved Africans, transformed Brazil into Portugal's most valuable colony. The Atlantic slave trade became central to Portuguese imperial economics, with Portuguese traders transporting over 4 million Africans to Brazil alone. The integration of Portuguese territories created the world's first truly global economy. Silver from Spanish America flowed through Portuguese networks to Asian markets in exchange for spices, silk, and porcelain. African gold financed European trade goods, while Brazilian sugar satisfied European appetites. This triangular Atlantic trade system generated enormous wealth for Portuguese merchants and the royal treasury. Portuguese cultural influence spread through this commercial network. The Portuguese language took root across 4 continents, while architectural styles, cuisine, and religious practices blended with local traditions to create unique, Portuguese-influenced cultures from Macau to Salvador da Bahia. The death of King Sebastian at the Battle of Alcácer Quibir in 1578 precipitated a succession crisis that fundamentally altered Portuguese history. Philip II of Spain successfully claimed the Portuguese throne in 1580, uniting the Iberian Peninsula under Spanish rule for 60 years. This Iberian union brought both opportunities and challenges for the Portuguese Empire. Initially, the union provided access to Spanish-American silver and expanded global networks. However, Portugal's enemies became Spain's enemies, subjecting Portuguese territories to attack from Dutch, English, and French forces. The Dutch, in particular, systematically attacked Portuguese positions in Asia and Africa, capturing Ceylon, much of coastal Brazil temporarily, and numerous trading posts. The long Dutch-Portuguese War, 1602 to 1661, severely weakened Portuguese imperial strength. The Dutch East India Company's superior organization and financing gradually displaced Portuguese influence across maritime Asia. By 1640, Portugal had lost many of its most profitable Asian territories, though it retained important positions in India, Macau, and Timor. The Portuguese Restoration of 1640 ended Spanish rule but left Portugal facing enormous challenges. The new Braganza dynasty under John IV had to rebuild Portuguese strength while fighting for independence from Spain. The empire was drastically reduced but not destroyed. Brazil remained intact, and key Asian positions survived. The discovery of gold in Minas Gerais around 1695 provided Portugal with new wealth and imperial purpose. Brazilian gold financed Portuguese recovery and funded magnificent architectural projects like the Monastery of Mafra. However, this wealth also increased Portuguese dependence on Brazil while reducing investment in other imperial territories. Portuguese diplomacy during this period focused on securing imperial borders and maintaining colonial control. The Treaty of Madrid, 1750, with Spain rationalized territorial boundaries in South America, while marriage alliances and commercial agreements secured Portuguese independence. The Pombaline reforms of the 1750s modernized colonial administration and attempted to strengthen Portuguese economic competitiveness. The late 18th and early 19th centuries brought unprecedented challenges to Portuguese imperial authority. The Napoleonic Wars devastated metropolitan Portugal, forcing the royal court to flee to Rio de Janeiro in 1807. This remarkable transfer of the imperial capital to America temporarily revitalized Brazil but weakened Portuguese control over other territories. Brazilian independence in 1822 dealt a catastrophic blow to Portuguese imperial wealth and prestige. Brazil had provided the majority of Portuguese imperial revenues, and its loss left Portugal as a minor European power with scattered African and Asian possessions. The Portuguese Civil War, 1828 to 1834, further weakened the empire's coherence and administrative capacity. Attempts to compensate for Brazilian loss by expanding African territories met with limited success. Portuguese control over Angola and Mozambique remained largely coastal until the late 19th century, while Asian possessions continued to decline in importance. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 reduced the strategic value of remaining Portuguese Indian Ocean territories. The 19th century scramble for Africa provided Portugal with an opportunity to expand its African territories. The Berlin Conference of 1884–85 recognized Portuguese claims to large areas of Angola and Mozambique, giving Portugal two substantial African colonies for the first time since losing Brazil. Portuguese colonial rule in Africa was characterized by authoritarian administration, forced labor systems, and limited investment in infrastructure or education. The Estado Novo regime of Antonio Salazar, 1932–1968, viewed African colonies as integral parts of Portugal, refusing to consider decolonization even as other European powers abandoned their empires. This intransigence led to prolonged independence wars in Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau beginning in the 1960s. These conflicts drained Portuguese resources and contributed to the Carnation Revolution of 1974, which overthrew the authoritarian regime. The new democratic government immediately began decolonization, granting independence to African colonies by 1975. The Portuguese Empire's final chapter concluded in 1999 with the handover of Macau to China, ending nearly 6 centuries of continuous imperial presence. Today, the Community of Portuguese Language Countries, CPLP, maintains cultural and economic ties among former Portuguese territories, while the Portuguese language serves over 260 million speakers across 4 continents as a lasting legacy of imperial expansion. The Portuguese Empire's economic foundation rested on revolutionary innovations in maritime commerce and financial organization. The Casa de India, established in Lisbon around 1503, served as the central institution coordinating Asian trade, collecting customs duties, and managing the crown's commercial monopolies. This sophisticated bureaucracy pioneered early forms of maritime insurance, standardized weights and measures across imperial territories, and developed credit systems that financed expeditions years in advance of expected returns. Portuguese merchants created the world's first truly global commodity chains. Pepper purchased in Kerala with American silver was sold in Antwerp to finance expeditions to Brazil for sugar, which was then traded for African gold and slaves. This intricate web of exchange required unprecedented coordination across vast distances and diverse cultural contexts. Portuguese commercial practices, including standardized contracts, bills of exchange, and maritime law, became templates for later European colonial enterprises. The empire's monetary systems reflected this global integration. Portuguese coins circulated from Macau to Mozambique, while colonial mints in Brazil and India produced currency tailored to regional needs. The real became one of the world's first truly international currencies, facilitating trade across linguistic and cultural boundaries. Portuguese banking houses in major commercial centers managed complex financial instruments that connected local markets to global networks. Catholic evangelization formed a central pillar of Portuguese imperial ideology, distinguishing it from purely commercial ventures. The Padroado system granted Portuguese monarchs extensive control over Catholic Church activities in imperial territories, making religious conversion a state priority. Jesuit missions became particularly influential, establishing schools, hospitals, and churches that served as centers of Portuguese cultural influence. In Asia, Portuguese missionaries encountered sophisticated philosophical and religious traditions that profoundly influenced Catholic theology. Francis Xavier's mission to Japan, 1549 to 1551, initiated cultural exchanges that enriched both Portuguese and Japanese intellectual traditions. The development of Christian art in Japan, India, and China incorporated local aesthetic traditions, creating unique fusion styles that reflected cross-cultural dialogue rather than simple cultural imposition. Portuguese colonial society developed distinctive racial and cultural classifications that differed markedly from other European colonies. The concept of mestiçagem, racial mixing, was more accepted in Portuguese territories, leading to complex social hierarchies based on ancestry, occupation, and cultural affiliation rather than rigid racial categories. This flexibility, while still hierarchical and often exploitative, allowed for greater social mobility and cultural synthesis than in many other colonial contexts. The Portuguese Empire served as a laboratory for scientific and technological innovation that transformed global knowledge systems. Portuguese navigators developed sophisticated cartographic techniques, creating the most accurate world maps of the 16th century. The compilation of rudders, navigation manuals, preserved detailed knowledge of winds, currents, and coastal features that became essential references for all subsequent European navigation. Botanical and zoological exchanges initiated by Portuguese exploration fundamentally altered global agriculture and cuisine. The introduction of New World crops like maize, cassava, and sweet potatoes to Africa and Asia revolutionized food production and population growth. Conversely, Asian spices, African crops, and American plants created new agricultural possibilities in all Portuguese territories. Portuguese medical knowledge expanded through encounters with indigenous healing traditions. Colonial hospitals in Goa, Salvador, and Macau became centers for medical innovation, combining European, African, Asian, and American therapeutic practices. Portuguese physicians documented previously unknown diseases and treatments, contributing to global medical knowledge while developing new approaches to tropical medicine. The Portuguese Empire's historical significance extends far beyond its political boundaries. As the first global maritime empire, Portugal pioneered the oceanic trade networks that connected previously isolated continents. Portuguese exploration techniques, navigational instruments, and maritime knowledge laid the foundation for the age of exploration and European global expansion. The empire's cultural legacy remains profound. Portuguese architectural styles, cuisine, music, and religious practices blended with local traditions across 4 continents, creating unique hybrid cultures. The Portuguese language became a global language, while Portuguese legal and administrative concepts influenced colonial governance worldwide. However, this legacy includes devastating consequences, particularly the Atlantic slave trade that forcibly transported millions of Africans to the Americas. Portuguese colonial policies often prioritized extraction over development, contributing to long-term economic challenges in former colonies. The Portuguese Empire demonstrated both the possibilities and limitations of early modern imperialism. Its initial success stemmed from maritime innovation, commercial flexibility, and cultural adaptability. Its eventual decline resulted from metropolitan weakness, inadequate resources, and failure to adapt to changing global circumstances. Understanding Portuguese imperial history provides crucial insights into the broader patterns of European expansion, global trade development, and the complex legacies of colonialism that continue to shape our contemporary world. The Portuguese Empire's 6th-century span makes it one of history's longest-lasting empires, fundamentally shaping global patterns of trade, cultural exchange, and political development that resonate today.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.